Good day, everyone, and welcome to our roundtable discussion. So, today we're tackling a question that has sparked national debate for years. When does art stop being free expression and start causing justifiable public harm or offense? To explore this, we'll examine one of the most controversial artworks in the Philippines, Politeísmo by Mediejo Cruz, exhibited at the Cultural Center of the Philippines in 2011. Joining us today are three guests with differing perspectives: Ramos presenting the pro censorship point of view, Rakasa defending autonomy and open dialogue, and Reyes offering a balanced and contextual perspective. So, to start, let's revisit what happened. Polytheism combined religious imagery with pop culture and political symbols, which led to strong public outrage and eventual closure to the exhibit. So, Ms. Ramos, do you believe in the CCP made that the right decision in taking down polytheism? Why or why not?
Yes, I believe the CCP made the right decision. Polytheism caused strong emotional and moral offense to a large portion of the public, especially in a deeply religious country like the Philippines. Displaying sacred symbols alongside sexual and political imagery created social tension and anger, which can be seen as a form of harm. By removing the work from the gallery, the CCP acted responsibly to protect public respect and social harmony, while still allowing the artist to express his ideas in other, more appropriate context.
So, Mr. Casa, was the CCP's decision a violation of free expression or a reasonable response to public outrage?
The CCP's decision to close the exhibit is viewed as a violation of creative expression, deemed unnecessary in response to public outrage. Under Mill's harm principle, it did not cause physical harm and instead provided a social benefit by provoking self reflection and debate. It dismisses the offense principle, asserting that attendees of cultural center can choose to leave if offended.
How about you, Sir Reyes? How do you think the CCP should have handled the controversy? Could they have managed the situation without resorting to censorship?
Thank you. One good thing the CCP actually did was they held an open forum between visitors of the gallery and the gallery itself regarding the controversy. Here, they were able to discuss their opinions and converse how they really felt about the situation. Of course, though, there were some people who were overly emotional and hard to rationalize with regarding the situation. So one thing the CCP could have done is place warnings or at least inform visitors of the possible triggers in the displays. When dealing with sensitive matters such as the one Politismo deals with, it is important to be aware of how your art may be perceived.
So let's shift to the artwork's intent. Cruz described polytheism as a critic of idolatry, religious, political, and cultural. So, Ms. Ramos, do you think an artist's intent still matters when the public feels deeply offended?
Artistic intent is important because it shows the purpose behind the work. However, it does not erase the real impact on the audience. Even if Cruz meant to critique society, the artwork still offended many people deeply by using sacred religious symbols in ways they found disrespectful. In public spaces, where people cannot avoid the artwork, intent cannot fully justify serious offense. Artists should consider how their art will affect the public, especially in sensitive cultural or religious contexts.
So, what message do you think Cruz was trying to communicate? Should the public make space to understand the artwork before reacting?
I believe that the message conveyed by Medio Cruz through Politeísmo serves as a catalyst for critical self reflection and societal debate, aimed at challenging established beliefs. The artwork seeks to provoke dialogue and ideological confrontation and is described as visual argument or a form of speech. And the public should take time to understand the message before reacting. While immediate emotional reactions are a natural human response to confronting provocative art, especially in a public sphere. It requires a greater degree of intellectual engagement.
So, Sir Reyes, does the gap between Cruz's intent and public's interpretation reflect bigger issues in how we communicate and consume art?
In this case specifically, the public's interpretation of polytheism didn't really leave much room for the artist's intent to push through. So I agree with Rakasa in that art is often taken at face value and not fully appreciated anymore. Especially now, we live in the TikTok short form, low attention span age. Um, we usually take 5 seconds to glance at something and suddenly you have all this judgment already. And for art, especially when you misunderstand it, that's really not enough time. So we have a problem with how we consume art now.
So now let's analyze this through two philosophical frameworks. Mill's harm principle, which restricts expression only if it causes real harm, and Feinberg's offense principle, which restricts expression if it causes serious and unavoidable offense. So, Ms. Ramos, based on Fieldbird's offense principle, do you think the public's reaction justified the censorship of polytheismo?
Yes, the public outrage in this case was both serious and unavoidable for gallery visitors. Feinberg's principle supports limiting expression when it produces profound offense that cannot be avoided. Since polytheism was displayed in the public, government funded space, many people were forced to encounter the artwork, and for them, the offense was intense. Therefore, censorship was justified to protect the community from moral distress and preserve social harmony.
How about you, Mr. Casa? Using Milharm's principle, did the artwork cause actual harm or was it merely offensive?
From the viewpoint of Mill's harm principle, polytheismo did not cause any kind of physical harm that would warrant censorship or restriction. Instead, the intense public reaction it generated constitutes mere offense or emotional discomfort. Mill explicitly stated that offense is as insufficient grounds to restrict freedom of expression, as confronting challenging ideas is a necessary part of free society.
How about you, Mr. Reyes? How should society balance these two principles, protecting people from offense or harm while still defending artistic freedom?
To balance those two, I think more control is in the artist's hands. Because it's hard to tell an entire audience how to react to certain things. Artists have a right to free expression, but they're not necessarily free from consequence. Artists still have an inherent responsibility to what they put out into the world, and they should take into account how people will react to their art. Especially here in the Philippines, we live in a conservative country, so it naturally wouldn't be accepted if it's too bold or daring. Not to say that artists should like filter themselves because they still have the right to express themselves. But if the way you express yourself causes discomfort, is what the art or the message more important? So that is something artists have to think about and perhaps compromise.
The controversy resulted in intense backlash, death threats, and national debate. Ms. Ramos, should artists be held responsible for how the public reacts to provocative art, or is the responsibility elsewhere?
A well known global example is the 1989 film The Last Temptation of Christ, which was banned in several countries because it depicted Jesus in ways many Christians considered sacrilegious. Governments limited its public showing to prevent serious offense, moral outrage, and potential social unrest. Similarly, in the Philippines, certain books and films have been restricted when their content was judged harmful to public morality, showing that censorship can sometimes protect shared social values without fully silencing expression.
How about you, Mr. Casa? How can society promote open dialogue instead of hostility when responding to controversial artworks?
In 1933, the famous Mexican muralist Diego Rivera was commissioned by the Rockefeller family to create a large fresco for the Rockefeller Center in New York City titled Man at the Crossroads. Rivera's mural depicting Lenin was destroyed by Nelson Rockefeller due to its critique of capitalism and endorsement of socialism. This act suppressed artistic expression and prioritized property rights over artistic integrity. Rivera later recreated the mural as man controller of the universe in Mexico City, symbolizing resistance to corporate and political censorship.
And you, Mr. Reyes, what ethical responsibilities do institutions like the CCP have when presenting provocative or sensitive content?
The most popular example I can think of institutions catering their art to certain appropriate groups are TV and movie ratings. For instance, let's take gore and sex scenes as controversial art. These movies and TV series are restricted to 16 plus, which makes sure that the art is still distributed and the artists get their freedom of expression. But at the same time, respecting that gore and sex scenes aren't for everyone, particularly children. So at least here, only the appropriate audience will see it, and you don't get all the conflict of children seeing stuff they're not supposed to see.
So let's broaden the discussion with examples beyond politismo. Can you share an example where censorship was justified to protect public morality or prevent harm?
Art crosses the line when it causes serious, unavoidable offense, undermines communal values, or threatens social peace. Free expression becomes a problem when it deeply insults shared beliefs, including religious or moral convictions, and creates division, anger, or harm in community. Art should challenge ideas, but it should also respect the cultural and ethical norms of society, in public spaces especially. Responsibility and sensitivity matter, so expression and public decency can coexist.
Can you share an example where censorship went too far and suppressed important artistic expression or social criticism?
Society goes too far in limiting freedom of expression when restrictions are applied to content that is merely unpopular, offensive, or critical of those in power, rather than to speech that causes direct, imminent, and defined harm. This line is crossed when a democracy attempts to control the marketplace of ideas by silencing dissenting or complex viewpoints simply to maintain social comfort or political stability.
Do you know of an example where a controversial artwork was successfully presented without needing censorship?
I don't think this should be decided by one particular person or just one group. And the decision if an artwork is too offensive or harmful should be discussed by all parties involved. This should be discussed by artists who involve themselves in the same niche, genre, or industry. This should be discussed by audiences who involve themselves in this kind of art. This should be discussed by galleries who push and promote these kinds of art. Discussions about controversy are healthy provided they're done properly and appropriately. Though with all the discussion and weighing the morality of art, there is always one universal line though that you should never cross, and that would be to never intentionally offend or harm with your art, or more specifically take pride in offense or harming others through art. um because then the beauty of art is lost, and you've turned art into a weapon to garner a reaction out of people, or to hurt people, or make them feel bad. Yeah. So that's it.
So, as we end this discussion, we're reminded to a lot of truths behind all of this painting. But I think the underlying tone of it all is that art and society continuously shape one another. Art becomes harmful only when intention loses its sincerity, when it stops speaking from soul. And society, in turn, crosses the line when it forgets the expression in a human need, not a privilege. In the push and pull between what is acceptable and what may be harmful, we discover that there is no single authority, only shared responsibility. It is in this moment of chaos that clarity is born, and in its stillness that meaning arises. So, as we leave today, may we carry this thought: art is not just what we see, it is what we feel, question, challenge, and become. And the lines we draw, whether in creativity or in society, should always lead us back to understanding, compassion, and truth. So that is for today and for everyone who participated in this sitcom discussion of ours. Have a good day. Thank you.